Hello my friends, this video is proudly brought to you by GUMOUT. Body filler's gotten a pretty bad rap over the years because there are hundreds of ways to apply it and shape it incorrectly, and you have thousands of DIYers and self-proclaimed experts that jump into this process without knowing what they are doing. This stuff was never intended to fix the 6-inch deep crater in the side of your door from a Prius love tapping you in a parking lot. However, there is an incorrect way of doing this that will yield pretty decent results and save you hours of your time. Lucky for you, there are two polar opposite vehicles in this video. We have our Mini Cooper burnout truck, whose only job is to destroy tires, and if all goes to plan, it will tap walls at some point in its life, so it seems absurdly illogical to try and make it perfect. But then we have the GUMOUT giveaway truck that is for you guys, and I need it to look as close to perfect as possible. So by the end of this video, you're gonna know how to do this incorrectly, but still get good results. You're gonna know how much work goes into making this process perfect or as close to as possible. You're gonna know how to prep the surface and what product to use. So you can kind of decide where you wanna be. If you're building a race car and just want it to look decent, you can do option A. If you're building something and you're trying to get as close to show quality-esque as possible, you can do option B.
Well, on the high chance we're gonna hit barriers and walls with that, we're gonna do this Evercoat because it's got fiberglass in it, so it should hold on a little bit better with vibration. And if we decide to smash something, we already wiped this down with alcohol. It's all squeaky clean.
All right, roof is sanded with 180 grit, cleaned off with isopropyl alcohol. That'll give this stuff a good texture to grab onto. We are starting with Evercoat's Everglass. This stuff has fiberglass infused in the filler, which makes it a lot stronger than the normal lightweight filler you see crack when people put it on really thick. So if you do have any spots where you know you're gonna have to lay it on a little heavy, this should be your go-to. The first incorrect method of doing this, but it will save you time, is using the air sander. If you choose to go this route, this is what you need to know. You wanna keep the air sander flat. Do not cheat and try and tilt it in efforts to sand certain spots down faster. Keep it flat, take your time, because this is as fast as you're gonna be able to go. Rule number 2 is to sand in an X pattern. If you sand on the same line over and over, you're gonna do the same thing and create low points that you are not gonna see until the whole car is painted, and then it's gonna look like you never even did any body work. So keep it flat, sand in an X pattern, and you'll get pretty smooth lines. They're not gonna be perfect, but that's not what we're going for on this vehicle. All right, after you get all that thick, heavy stuff done, you fill in all those big craters that you don't want to be seen, you can move on to a lightweight filler, which is what this is. This stuff's pretty cool because it changes colors when it's ready to be sanded, so you can avoid sticking your sandpaper into something that is still tacky. This is going to be really good for filling in pinholes and kind of feathering those lines in. I do recommend you read the instructions because, as you'll see in a minute, I applied too much hardener. I'm mixing this stuff fast and heavy because we have a lot to do and not a whole lot of time. So I'm mixing this and slinging it as quick as I possibly can. So with the fiberglass filler, we kind of went thick and heavy directly over the trouble spot. And what we're going to do with the lightweight filler is go significantly past the trouble spot. And that's going to give us the room and the distance to slowly transition that line in, slowly feather in the sides so that it looks as close to seamless as you can. I used the block sander here in a couple spots to kind of see the high points, because you'll see the sand marks go in a certain direction and not touching others, almost like a guide coat. And then I'd use the DA to knock down those high points, and I kept going back and forth checking it, and that'll speed up the process and still give you a pretty decently straight result. So yesterday, basically what we did incorrectly, I used the DA for a vast majority of knocking these lines down and getting it flat. What you almost never should do is use the DA to actually form the filler that you're using. You want to always use the block sander. And I did a little bit on the feathering of the last tidbits because that line was so and that was so blah. And then over here, if you remember last video, we took a bunch of filler off of this panel. We probably took like 4 pounds of filler off and added a pound back in. The only point of all this is not to get perfectly straight, but it's just to make the lines smooth. This is all going to get vinyl wrapped, and I don't want a bunch of holes and a bunch of hard waves. So we just have a little bit left in a couple spots just to kind of get some of those dimples out. A little bit different in a few ways. The metal work on this is a lot better than that. And so we have a lot less forming and a lot less depth that we have to do. However, on this, there will be very minimal use of the DA because we want this line and this roof line here to be dead straight. So this is going to be a lot. That was a lot of labor because even the little bits that I did use the sanding block on, like my arms are shot. Weird. They're just like drained.
But on this, we're gonna be using almost entirely the sanding block to get that perfectly straight and get these few lines here just as straight as we possibly can.
So this part is similar to the Mini. We're going to use the Everglass to put over the parts that are deeper than others and get that kind of built up. And then we're going to use the lightweight filler to really feather in and go. It's going to look like because I really am. I've probably put almost half a gallon of this lightweight filler on this roof, but we are sanding probably 70 to 80% of that off. I just wanted to go really wide and cover a bunch of it, so that way we had plenty to use and we didn't have to redo this and add layers over and over again.
Now, at first glance, you're probably looking at this and going, holy crap, I don't want to win that thing anymore because it's going to be a mess. Here's what we're doing. This is based on what I've done incorrectly in the past. So we have a low point right here all the way across from where this piece of metal and that piece of metal meets. It just, the whole thing bows down. So rather than doing a little short piece and then the transition is off, or this transition is off, you cover everything. And then you slowly block the whole roof. And by the time we're done, probably about 85% of this is going to be gone, and we're going to be left with a really thin, perfect transition. And once there's primer on it, you're not even going to know what we did. So there is a lot. That's roughly, I'd say that's pretty close to like a third to a half of a gallon on there. There's 3 separate giant slabs of this lightweight filler, and then there's the fiberglass filler underneath it. So we're going to let this dry. And then very slowly, meticulously, with basically the weight of our hand, we're going to block the roof until it is perfectly straight. So the reason for all of that is just to get this line in the middle straight. So we're gonna exit back and forth over and over for probably 2 hours. But by the time we're done with it, it's gonna look great.
When you're doing a big flat panel, it's typically extremely beneficial to have a big flat sanding block. I did not have that, so I found this piece of metal from one of my shelves and I fiberglass resin 80 grit sandpaper to it so that we could have a longer, wider, straighter surface area to work with. And then I'll use the little sanding block because it's a little flexible, so I'll use that on kind of some of the curves. For those unfamiliar, behind the scenes, we have way too much going on and we are very much out of time. I'm taking my time on the GUMOUT truck, but I found some more spots I wanted to add filler to on the Mini Cooper, so I'm gonna use an angle grinder to shape that because it will make that process a lot faster. I also highly recommend you do not do that, but I'm gonna show you anyways.
All right, so what we got here is a high build primer from Evercoat. I haven't used this before and it's kind of cool. Sprays on pink. When you sand it, it goes gray, so you're easily able to see your highs and lows. We are gonna go real nice and slow with this guy. So this is actually a piece of metal from that thing there. So this is 180 grit, and what we're gonna do is basically just let the weight of this be our pressure, and we are gonna do that over and over. So after we get this blocked, we'll throw the black epoxy on the GUMOUT truck and on the Mini Cooper, and I'll be able to show you guys a lot better of why you want to block and why you don't want to use the air sander. If you're going for a really good job, you'll be able to see night and day the difference between how flat and straight this is versus how wavy and not straight the Mini Cooper is. That still took me about an hour and a half, if you can believe it, just because we're not putting our weight into it, we're not digging, we're just going back and forth and letting the weight of your arms and hands basically do the work. So what we are left with is actually like feeling this, it feels incredible, and I'm a lot less worried than I was earlier because it feels absolute, like we're real close to perfect in my, like, you know, to an extent. It is looking pretty good as well. That's not high. That's not high. That's not high. That one's high. So same thing here. See how we took the primer back down to the filler underneath? That's what we wanted. We wanted the primer to just fill in the little imperfections. We do still have a little bit here, but that feels pretty good. So that'll just feather out with the next layer. So let's blow this off, wipe it down really good with isopropyl alcohol, and then we'll shoot the epoxy over it. And then we'll take a look at what we got. I have to do a little more sanding on that to get that ready to roll. Let me knock that out, and then we'll get this sprayed, and we'll see how good of a job I did visually with your eyeballs.
I cannot put into words how much I highly do not recommend you use an angle grinder to do this. If you do, only use it for the ridiculously high parts that you laid unevenly with the filler. Do not use this to shape the filler. Only use it to knock down the big nasty parts if you are in a rush. I do not recommend doing this. I just wanted to show you because that's what we do. We show you everything we do, but don't. Please just pick something else. The side-by-side comparison of this is exactly what I wanted you guys to see. And I've said this every single time I do body work. I've said this. I love and hate doing this for the same reason, and that is there is no way to shortcut doing this right. There is zero way you can get the result that we got over there and get the result we got right here in the same amount of time for the same amount of effort. There's no possible way that, like, you have to do it right, and this is a great example. Now, I will say this, the Mini here, it looks really bad, and we're gonna make it better, but the results are still what I wanted you guys to see. We're gonna go over the roof of this with a pretty good amount of high build primer and, you know, really kind of feather it in because there's still some pretty terrible lines. But let me show you what we got, and you guys will. So for context, I probably have roughly, like, in total on the roof here, I probably have about 3 hours, I would guess, okay? On that roof, and I'm not exaggerating and I'm not bragging because it wouldn't, like, if anything, this would show that I'm inefficient at doing this job, but on that roof and top of cab, I probably have just under 40 hours in just the top of that thing. So let me show you what 4 hours-ish and 40 hours, let me show you what the difference is. I started wet sanding the sides here to get just some of the dust nibs off before vinyl, and I ran in a few spots. This primer is an epoxy, and it's much like, what are you doing, dude? That's primer. It runs probably easier than clear coat, I would say. You know, but I mean, overall, you know, we achieved what we wanted to. There's no hard weld line coming out of there. This roof, however, is so bad. But yeah, that's what no block sander and about 4 hours gets you. You could see where we use the angle grinder is actually pretty decent. Now let me show you what I spent a lot of time on, and let me show you what I am very proud of. Now, obviously, there's still a fair amount of pinholes, and there's some dust nibs, and we're not done with this, by the way. I showed you all those low points that are still there, so we're still going to go over this again. We're going to wet sand this. This is a really good sealer. This locks everything in. It takes forever to dry, but this stuff is what you want to use on bare metal, or I really like using it to cover the filler and then do more high build if you need it. And the high build that's left that we're going to do is really just to get sand lines out, get all these little tiny pinholes that might be still left from the filler, and it's just going to make everything perfect. And we do still have some spots. See, I even ran it on this pretty good. in like a handful. Yeah, specifically on this corner here. We got some runs. Hello. But overall, you could see a giant difference. Let me try and get an angle where you can't see just all of the dust nibs. That's pretty ridiculously straight. I mean, look, this is primer, dudes, and look at that. That's insane. I mean, even back here, so you can see I didn't even touch those dents. There is a paint scheme for this, and I'm not going to tell you what it is, but just trust the process, trust my judgment, because it's going to be sick. Pretty night and day difference between, we used the same product on both, minus we obviously did the Evercoat High Build Primer on here, and we did not do that on that. That did help quite a bit, but the biggest difference was I block sanded this roof for hours. I could probably run a marathon on my hands at this point. I have gained so much endurance from block sanding this thing. Whereas that, I used the block sander for probably 10 minutes. And then we just used the DA air sander to just smooth the lines out and just make it look less atrocious. This is still a pretty good method specifically for this. I am not unhappy with this at all. The vinyl wrap that we're getting is real busy. You guys are gonna like it, and it's wild and it's crazy. So all the little tiny things are gonna get kind of hidden, and we really just wanted, I've said it 1,000 times, we wanted to just smooth the lines out. There is a good chance that we're gonna tap some concrete barriers with this. Making it as straight as that is completely useless. This would be a great time to remind you guys, if you, for some reason, have not entered to win yet, this truck is for you guys. GUMOUT is allowing me to build this for you, and you can enter for free. It is 100% free to enter to win, and we have about a month and a half to finish it, which means there's going to be a giant influx in videos and caffeine, because we have quite a bit left. We have almost every single part we need here for it, but because of my biting off more than we can chew ambition, we have to get that done in 5 days. We have 5 days to get that on the dyno, and there is no engine or transmission in it. And obviously you could see there's a lot left. So 5 days to get that done. As soon as we get back from Florida with that, we will have about a month and a half to get this done. And there's obviously a lot left on this. We're at the Freedom Factory doing what this is gonna do. Manny's gonna knock out the interior so we can kind of, you know, kill two birds with one stone in that regard. But the whole front room is filled with boxes. Most of these boxes here are all for this. I've got stuff at the house for this. Like, we've got parts everywhere, and it's going to be really cool. This is going to be sick. If you guys have not entered to win yet, it is free. The link to do so is in our description. You could do so once a month, which you only have October, November, December. You got 3 more chances to enter to win, and that just increases your odds without having to purchase anything. As always, a giant thank you to GUMOUT. Obviously, if it went without saying, I'm not a professional, and what you see the results of there are just from me screwing up and learning how to do it the right way. If there are any body guys watching and you saw something I did wrong, or you saw something that I could have saved time on and still done correctly, I please ask you to tell me, because I cannot improve or get better without being told what to do. That's what I got for you.